This podcast is brought to you by Bonus Room Productions and We Own This Town.
I am Jason T. Meares, Esquire. And I'm Kelly Hoyle Bolick. And we are Dimas Today.
How's it going, Kelly?
JT, I'm here, man. I'm alive.
Congratulations. You made it. Another day.
The hamster wheel that is my life, that is a lot of our lives these days.
Every day is the same. Every day is the same.
But, you know, we've still got that glow from the Face the Music trailer. So that's nice. Kind of trying to ride that wave.
I've watched it so many times. So many times. I love the music in the trailer. It's great. People are not going to be too surprised to find out that I'm stoked for the next Bill and Ted movie.
Same here. You know, I've had a couple friends that maybe their reaction is not positive. It's like, uh-oh, I don't know. What if this sucks? And I just try to tell them that that's not possible. It's not
possible. I'm not going to live in that world. Are you?
I mean, I'm being totally objective here.
Absolutely.
And I just know for sure it's going to be a home run.
Oh, man. You know what? I won't say that I have low expectations. I would just say that the bar for me to enjoy this movie, Face the Music, is so low because of what it's already got going for it. You got the original writers, you got a great director, you've got the original cast returning. They're all in. We now know the premise of it. It looks great. I mean, there's going to be weird, funny stuff along the way. I'm just already delighted that I get to spend another 90 minutes with these characters.
Me too. Speaking of characters, Furious 7 has them all. It's got everybody.
Everybody's in there.
How did anyone even pay for this? I just don't understand.
I was so excited to get your text that just was all caps, Kurt Russell. Now, was that when you were watching the credits as it was opening up and then you're like, holy hell, Kurt Russell's in this? Or was it when he showed up as Mr. Nobody?
It's when he showed up. You know, I'm pretty good about watching opening credits, but that one just completely got by me, man.
That's even better. That makes it even sweeter. I mean, Mr. Nobody. Let's start with Mr. Nobody, all right? Because there are bigger fish to fry, but what a delightful character, right?
Sure. It was interesting. Like they sidelined The Rock, and then in comes Mr. Nobody to fill in. If I had any complaint here, it's just that his exit was a little odd and abrupt, and I kept thinking we'd hear from him again, further into the movie, and you didn't get anything, and that's fine. In true Fast and Furious fashion, you never see him die, so he's probably still alive. And again, this comes up with other characters in this movie. It's just that no one can ever die for real. If they send you away and don't kill you in the movie, then maybe that's when you're dead for real.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, up is down, black is white. But what I loved about Mr. Nobody is he's set up like a classic action movie villain, right?
You are right. That, and I found that interesting because you're dead on, man. I was like 75% sure, he was going to come in, he comes in as this slick guy. No one's heard of him before. Hey, I'm friends with your buddy, The Rock. And I'm just like, you're going to have a double cross here, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's the guy with all the answers. He's 3 steps ahead. He's from a shadowy government thing. He's set up like the Black Ops team of Die Hard 2. They come in and they're like helping John McClane, and then suddenly there's a heel turn and they're all the bad guys, and you're like, of course. And that's been parroted and done so many times. The first time you watch this movie, you absolutely think that the government is going to double cross the family, and the fact that they don't is a stroke of screenwriting genius as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, because I kept thinking, we were going to get Kurt Russell. He's dipped his toes into a few villains at this point. If you remember the Tarantino movie where Death Proof, that's the name, and he's a great villain in that movie. And so I really thought that's where we're going to go, but no, you get that. By the time his character is exiting the movie, he's like Atticus Finch,
Yeah, he's great. He's like this incredible benefactor who does exactly what he says he's going to do, lives up to the promises, and then that last little line that he has where he's like, Dom, I got to tell you something. You got to try the Belgian beer. It's just like, yes, this is great. I'm all in. I was excited to see Kurt Russell in this movie. I was thrilled with how they used him. It was just wonderful.
Going back to the beginning of this movie, first major thing I noticed, different director. It is James Wan. It's no longer Justin Lin. But it looks to me like James Wan was definitely mentored by Lin. Lin still stayed on as a producer, if I'm not wrong.
I believe that's correct. I'll say that he did a pretty good job of mimicking the house style, but he did add in a few flourishes from his other movies, camera tricks that he likes to incorporate that were very apparent. And I was watching it again. I was like, oh, well, this shot has never been done in this series before. Namely, the camera, when it's locked into the orientation of somebody in a fight. So did you notice, like, when The Rock and Jason Statham are fighting at the headquarters, when somebody would get punched and knocked and rolled over, the camera would roll with them?
Yes, you're right.
That's something that director does. That's like one of his visual flares. It really reminded me of when John Woo directed Mission Impossible 2. You know, like, It was definitely a Mission Impossible movie, but it was definitely a John Woo movie too.
Yeah, that's a good call there. The John Woo style, stylized in that fashion. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And it's neat for me, at least, to always see another director come into an established franchise and not only like honor what's come before, but also add their own flair. I think, with Marvel, there's a lot of problems where a Marvel movie is a Marvel movie. That's loosened up quite a bit, I think, since Thor Ragnarok. But it's great to see in these larger franchises where they allow these directors to kind of make things their own a little bit.
Now, one of the other things that just really impresses me at this point, the addition of Jason Statham, where you essentially now you have 3, maybe even arguably 4, because Paul Walker has been a leading man in enough movies that maybe I don't particularly care for, but outside of the Fast and Furious franchise, to somehow make that work just really blew my mind. I was just super impressed. Like, you have all of this, and now you're going to bring in Jason Statham.
You're absolutely right, and they do it so well. At this point, Fast and the Furious franchise is basically the anti-Expendables. They're doing so well what the Expendables did so poorly, with trying to get all these action stars in one film. It's a master class in how to juggle different on-screen personalities, at least. Now, I'm not sure, but I think Furious 7 is where Candy Ass came into play, and it might have been the movie before, but by this point, The Rock and Vin Diesel on set are having like serious tension and serious issues. They do not like each other one bit.
Yep. There's I read that The Rock he was disappointed in the work ethic of certain cast members around the set. But, funny you mentioned the Expendables, because I had read how, that was all going on at the same time, close to the same time as this movie, with some of the same actors. And even including our favorite female MMA fighter, Ronda Rousey. That crossover to me is interesting. And, like you said, one movie really gets it right and the other one doesn't.
Man, I wanted to like the Expendables so much. I mean, the first one was okay, I guess. I just like that. I feel like that movie, we're 2 middle-aged white guys in our 40s. We grew up on the teat of 80s action films, right? Like that. So the Expendables should be right up our wheelhouse. And they just kind of dropped the ball. Anyway, that'll be our next limited series, why we're disappointed in Sylvester Stallone. So you're absolutely right. The way that they balance these characters, a lot of this credit goes to Chris Morgan, right? I mean, he came on board with Justin Lin with Tokyo Drift, and those two together really molded this series into what it's become. He has a knack to balance all these huge personalities, all these different archetypes, and make them work and click together. And I'm so impressed with that guy.
Yeah, completely agree. Everything changes and for the better, character-wise, in this series with him. So another thing I found interesting, when, towards the beginning of the movie, I guess this is after the bomb blows up the house. and Vin Diesel heads to Tokyo after he finds out that Han's dead, and you have the scene with Sean Boswell and seeing Lucas Black again, and it's like they had him in footage from Tokyo Drift and then bled that into a new scene, and he looks a decade older. It's incredible.
It's amazing. He's like
different hairline for sure.
Yeah, it's he's carrying his AARP card, and it's so glaring. It's so glaring. But I was so happy to see him back, and like the way that they folded the series in on itself. I don't know the true story of at what point they're like, okay, we're gonna make these prequels, and then we're gonna tie everything together. Everybody assumes that they're like, well, people like Han. We'll have him in this movie for a little scene because love that actor. He was great. And then the fact that they kept including him, it's like, oh, okay, what's going on here? Who knows? Like nobody thought that anybody had given any thought to Han being back. They're just like, oh, these are dumb movies and it's fun and we like the character. So moving forward, the fact that they ended the last movie with Han dying and Jason Statham killing him, and then at that point they go back and they bring Lucas Black back into it. Super cool. I think he's actually going to be in the new one too, which is being released next summer. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think that had something to do with him. Spoiler alert: getting killed off of NCIS New Orleans.
I would be killed off of an NCIS show if I could be in a Fast and Furious movie again.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one of those reasons, and we keep talking about it. Every movie outdoes the previous one, and this one worldwide was $1.5 billion movie. Insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, we gotta address the elephant in the room with Furious 7, and that's Paul Walker. As you were watching this, you knew that this was the one that he died in, right?
Right.
How did that affect your expectations of watching this film? Like, were you expecting him to die in the movie? Did you think his character would survive? What did you think? How did you think they would handle it?
Okay, I didn't know the outcome going into it of his character, and I didn't have any idea of at what point in the shooting he died either. So I had no idea, maybe when or at what point to start seeing if I could tell anything. Because I had heard before that his younger brothers were used in this movie to help finish the shooting. I think at first I did think they were going to kill him. As the movie went on, it became apparent after Vin Diesel convinces Mia to tell Brian that she's pregnant that I felt like they might do something like what they did here, where maybe they just would retire his character. And I thought it was an interesting decision. I kind of like it and I kind of don't. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say, as far as me being able to tell when he was having to be CGI'd or whatever they did to superimpose him over his brother, I honestly couldn't tell anything until the very end. The very end when they're racing, right? Yeah. And he's on the beach and all of that, right? But I know, yep. But then I read that they did like several months of shooting, almost half the movie without him.
And, the movie kind of suffers because of that, because you can tell that overall, I mean, it's absolutely a fun movie. It's got great action pieces, but it does kind of suffer from somebody trying to jam a puzzle together and not quite understanding the rules of how the puzzle fits. Everything's a little bit off. Like, there's a step or two off. Like you were talking about with Kurt Russell. There probably originally was another scene or two in there. It's just like, nope, he's dropped off the face of the earth now. But yeah, that last race where they're racing together, that looked not great. I will say, metatextually, I tear up every time I see that end sequence. Vin Diesel's narration and talking about everything. I'm choking up thinking about it right now. And I have zero capital in the Paul Walker game. Like I am not a guy that grew up liking this guy. I never disliked him. It's just his height of popularity. He was doing stuff I was not watching, including these movies. I came to him late. I really feel some true emotion when I watch that. And I think it's very sincere, and it is moving, and it does affect me. So I'll give them credit for that.
It's the ending that the fans deserve. That's what it feels like, right?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
And I can appreciate that. I thought what was cool, the song they used at the end there, that Wiz Khalifa song. That was apparently like the best-selling single of 2015 or whenever this movie came out. And I remember that song upon hearing it again, even though like prior to this movie, I could have never told you who did that song. Wiz Khalifa was out. You know, I love. There's a lot of hip hop I love, but Wiz Khalifa was pretty outside my wheelhouse. So,
yeah, pretty great, man, pretty great. Paul Walker also. I mean, like it's interesting to me that his adrenaline junkie plot dovetailed with his actual death, because as I was watching it, I won't say I had like uncut gems level of anxiety watching it, but the entire time I'm watching this movie, I'm like, oh God, Paul Walker's going to die now. Paul Walker's going to die now. And he didn't. And, you know, I think there are good things and bad things that, just like you said, I do think he was mismatched with the antagonist that he was up against. I didn't quite buy the two of them being equal. Not you know, disparage the dead, but he definitely seemed outmatched.
Well, we talked about it before. It seems like especially since these movies amped up, probably for the last couple, I didn't really see anywhere else for his character to go. And he was already sidelined and definitely being overmatched by, honestly, just better actors in the movie with him. I feel like more kept around for sentimental reasons, and they gave him a sentimental send-off. Now, had he never died in a car wreck, I feel like this series is so loyal to everyone, especially all the people originally involved, that he would stay in it forever. But he definitely didn't feel like the reason I'm watching these movies anymore. So,
yeah, and I get that. I have a counter to that. And I feel like what made these movies so strong, including the first one and the fourth moving on, like his chemistry with Vin Diesel and their relationship, that more than anything is like the reason why these movies exist. And
True.
I still felt that in Furious 7. I mean, like when they're sharing screen time and they're talking to each other, I genuinely believe that they had true love in their hearts for one another. The chemistry between those two actors, it's almost unparalleled. I think that's a strong reason for him to still be here. I do agree that he was getting outclassed acting wise in other scenes, but when he was with Vin Diesel, just unstoppable.
Yeah, and that's a great point. The chemistry between those two can't be beat. I don't know that you have that with anybody else. Obviously, you don't have that with Vin. You could say the opposite really works for Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson. They don't like each other, but they're electric on screen together. So,
yes, they are. They are.
Jason Statham, on the other hand, is just this is just a guy that I've always enjoyed him. I've never really gone deep into any of his main action movies. I like him. I liked him in more like ensemble stuff. Like this, and like I think the first movie, the Guy Ritchie films, right? Like I think those were his early movies, right? Guy Ritchie kind of put him on the map, and he's just he looks like he's straight out of a Dick Tracy cartoon. You know, his face is just intense. Like what is this guy like when he's just having a good time? Is it possible? Does he have a good time? Does he laugh? Does he smile?
Yeah, I think in real life, if Jason Statham smiles at you, you're about to get punched. I don't know, but you're dead on. The guy, the way that they folded him in to this whole thing is just perfect. I mean, I am not a huge fan of what Lucas Shaw is that his brother's name?
Owen Shaw.
Yeah, Owen Shaw. That's right. I'm not a huge fan of Owen Shaw as a villain. I think he was very generic. He didn't really do it for me. I was like, okay, he's kind of a guy in a suit. But Jason Statham. Oh, and let's talk about the opening scene. If we're talking about Deckard Shaw, the opening scene where he is in the hospital talking to his brother, right? And just like giving the background his motivation. His
brother, who is not dead.
Not dead. Totally not dead. Totally not dead. His brother is totally not dead. And then he walks out of the hospital, and for some reason, he has destroyed the entire thing. Like, there's a few people alive. I would like to know why he had to blow up the hospital to go visit his brother, but I guess I don't need to, you know? shows you that this Shaw is an agent of chaos and absolutely perfect at it. Like he's great. It's one of my favorite introductions to a villain ever.
Agreed. And all his action scenes were some of the best of the whole movie, especially that first sequence with the Rock when he's sitting in Hobbs' office, and then the whole sequence from there that plays out. One of the best in the franchise, honestly. Interesting choice that Hobbs got sidelined. I had read that there was a lot of shooting conflicts going on between him doing Hercules and then this movie, and then there was actually a delay in shooting in Furious 7 that allowed him to have a bigger role than what they were originally going to do.
Nice.
Hobbs that
nice.
is.
Right. Obviously, later on down the line, one of the movies we're going to be watching is titled Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah. And I want to know how we get there.
Yeah. It's a fun ride. Also want to talk about Natalie Emmanuel.
Sure. Missandei, right? Missandei from Game of Thrones.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So by the time she comes into play as this like another new main character, we've gotten Jaimin Hunsu already thrown on us, and it's like I'm starting to juggle in my brain, and I'm like, all right, who do I need to dedicate time to? Can this all work? I feel like I was worried that it would get overstuffed there for a minute, but I felt they worked her in nicely, especially, I guess, with a lot of the humor with Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris. A little borderline Me Too, if you ask me, but
yeah. Well, I mean, like the Me Too criticism is fair, but if this entire series is rooted in male gaze. Every time there's more than 3 cars on screen, you're probably going to see a female butt. It's just
right. And it's far more tame than the boobs and bombs of the 80s and 90s that these are really throwing back to. So I can appreciate that.
You brought him up, so Hunsu got the short stick here. I mean, like, that guy is so good in everything that he does, and he's pretty much relegated to saying no or kill him. He's relegated to a boss fight in Super Nintendo 16-bit video game. It's a real bummer because you bring in somebody of his class and caliber and don't give him much to do besides yell. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's Oscar nominated,
So I did like Natalie Emmanuel. She is featured in the next film at least. So I think she's a good addition to the cast. I don't know if they necessarily needed to bring in another hacker because that's supposed to be what Ludacris does, even though he's like a car guy. But it works, and it helps fill in the dynamic. And I'm always a fan of seeing hyper competent female characters added to action films. I'm always a fan of that. So I feel like overall she's a good addition.
Speaking of that, let's talk about Letty. Let's talk about Michelle Rodriguez, probably, her most dynamic film yet, and was glad to see that they finally got rid of the amnesia. About time.
Right. What'd you think about the secret wedding? Was that weird?
That was a little bit of a weird throw in there. Interesting choice, right? Because we literally don't remember it because it hasn't been a part of the movies. So I could see maybe they were playing that angle. Maybe we all had amnesia, Jason.
Maybe we did. But I was watching that, and I'll admit the first time that I ran through these, I was not giving them my full attention. I was just enjoying them. But I remember watching this for the first time. I was like, I don't remember this. Was this in another movie? And I'm like, I don't think it was. It's just a weird flex to throw in a secret wedding for 2 characters that are already committed to each other, right? I mean, I could see in a soap opera where you would throw in a secret wedding between 2 characters whose goals are opposed. So like, oh no, now they have to deal with the fact that they're married. But this is like, oh, okay, that's sweet and weird. I mean, did they win a drag race and have a priest at Race Wars marry them? It doesn't. It's very odd. I will say at the beginning of this film, I was still leaving a little space
for her to go rogue again. You know, there was just something from the prior film that I wasn't totally buying, and I kept thinking maybe they would throw in an angle of like Deckard Shaw having known her as well, and he was really controlling all the strings the whole time, something like that. But the more I look back on that might have been too much to break the hearts of the fans of this film and this franchise, right? It's just, you know, you lose Paul Walker and you make Letty go rogue. I don't know that it could hold up after that.
Yeah. I get it. Like sometimes you have to make that call. Famously on The West Wing, Alan Alda, the Republican candidate, was supposed to win in the last season, but because the character who played Leo Garrity died, they thought it was too much for, you know, the audience to handle both that defeat after the loss of an actual human being.
It's true. And then Jimmy Smith's storyline mirrored the rise of Obama. Incredible.
Yep. Incredible. What'd you think of the last action sequence on this? Like, so you've got 3 or 4 things going on, right? You've got the everybody racing around Los Angeles trying to upload a virus, and then you've got Jason Statham and Vin Diesel like duking it out in a parking garage, and then, oh my God, The Rock flexing to break his cast.
That was awesome. That was like vintage Schwarzenegger right there. Like at a Total Recall or something where he just flexes out. That was just, man, that got me so pumped up for the last act, you know?
Yeah. Yep. It was like, oh, Hobbs is back in. That's amazing. Also, I love that Hobbs is a dad, a girl dad. I love that so much.
It's a nice touch. It's a really nice touch. Yeah. Great chemistry with that actress. No idea if that's really his kid or not.
Pretty cool. I liked a lot of what went on in the last act, and I feel like I'm being hypercritical of this movie. When I rewatched it, I was like, oh, this is so much fun, and I love this movie. But I think that there are little things that don't work in it. I have trouble with how the racing went down, and then the Vin Diesel jumping the car into the helicopter. That seems like a bit much.
I mean, but we're talking Fast and Furious here. You really think that was too far?
You're right. You're right. It was not. It was neither too fast nor too furious.
It seemed like that was the one big action move. You know, every one of these has the big move that it goes for. And I don't know. Maybe there's an argument that the last couple have had the 2 big moves, right? But you know, this definitely was one. Now, I really thought the car was going to go in the helicopter, and I was a little disappointed that he was just hooking on the bag of grenades. But bag of grenades blowing up a helicopter is pretty sweet too. So
it is. And then, man, just when he's dead, and then Letty's love resurrecting him, that was also a bit much for me. But
my least favorite part, man. That was probably my least favorite part. Like, you're just not going to spend that much time with someone thinking they're dead before you realize they're not dead. And it's just not going to work that way. And I get it. You know, I'm willing to give a little leeway for certain things, but that was a part they could have done better.
I think so too. I don't think that he needed to be dead and everybody to be worried that he's dead. And maybe it's just because we had death so much on our minds with Paul Walker and waiting for, you know, his character's fate. At no time did I ever entertain the idea that he would actually be dead in this movie. And you've got to have some emotional stakes if that stuff's going to work, right?
That's a great point. It carried no weight for me because I knew there was no possible way he was actually going to die.
And again, you and I both are coming to this series late, right? Like, we did not see 7 in theaters. So maybe it would have worked, but I'm just not buying it. I don't think if you're somebody who's going to Furious 7, the midnight release when it first comes out, I just don't think you're ever buying the Vin Diesel's dead.
I also saw that they actually announced prior to the movie coming out the fate of Paul Walker's character. So it was a known thing before anyone saw this movie.
Wow.
You know, I don't know how I'd feel about that as a fan, but you know, right. I can also see, you know, it was such a, you know, publicized celebrity death at the time. that the major fans of his were really upset, and so I think ultimately it was probably the best call. Probably put more seats in the chairs to see how they were going to tribute him and end it.
And you know what? If I remember correctly, I think there was actually a little bit of uncertainty as to whether or not they'd finish this film.
Yeah, for a while it was that way, and I think there were a few months maybe that went by before they decided to move forward with it. It was like that he died in November, and they resumed filming the next spring.
Yeah.
And one thing I would also just like to mention that I did not realize, or I should say that I incorrectly assumed, was that his death was his fault, that he was driving the car and died that way. And not that I was thinking about like, oh, that idiot, I don't mean that unsympathetically, but it was actually his agent that was driving, and he was a passenger, which take that as you will. But, it changed my perspective just a little bit, and makes it a little bit more tragic, I think. But
yeah, I mean, obviously any premature death of somebody who's not an asshole is tragic, but there is a little bit of schadenfreude when I get it. I would have thought callous thoughts too. I mean, it's akin to Dale Earnhardt Jr. dying during a race, right?
Yeah. I had read more into it, and, they were leaving a fundraiser of all things. And I would say, at the time when I thought differently about these movies, I had never seen these movies and probably made terrible assumptions about the actors in the movies. And then you hear the guy from the Fast and Furious dies in a Fast and Furious wreck. I have no doubt my reaction at the time was callous. And if anything, I'm just glad that, this exercise has caused me to feel differently. I would not react that way again.
Me too, man. Me too. I feel I feel bad about my initial thoughts on that. It's just, life's too short for us to be dicks, right?
Right. Isn't it true? We've made this Fast and Furious discussion relevant for the times, my friend.
We have. I think Bill and Ted would not have ill thoughts toward these guys. So why should we? All right. Let me ask, what do you think's coming for 8? What do you know about 8? What do you think's happening?
The other thing is we no longer had the end credit scene.
Yeah.
So there is not really a setup here for, and I believe is 8, The Fate of the Furious.
It is.
All right.
It is.
I love that title. That's for sure. Maybe my favorite title yet.
It's wonderful. I was really hoping that they would continue it and number 9 would be The Fine and the Furious, but they didn't do that. So.
Well, let's say this. I know that there's a Hobbs and Shaw movie, and so the way they end it with Hobbs taking Shaw to jail, just has all the markings of somehow Shaw's going to get out of jail, and then we'll go from there. I don't know what to expect as far as Vin Diesel and the rest of his crew. I'm gonna be really interested to see post Paul Walker how this all goes.
Yeah.
Still wondering if we'll see any folks from the older movies that haven't popped back up yet. Like I was just really hoping we get more Eva Mendes at some point. Don't know if that's going to happen. I feel like, of all the people that have popped up that I thought were really good actors and I want to see again, it's definitely her.
Yeah,
Mr. Nobody. I would love to get Mr. Nobody involved, but I know Kurt Russell's a busy man, so
he is. Do you know who the main villain is in the next one?
I have no idea.
Oh, cool. All right, that's great. So I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with the casting. Fate of the Furious leans into some of the weirder tendencies of this series, but it's still a lot of fun. You're still going to enjoy yourself.
Can't wait. Can't believe I'm about to watch the 8th movie of this franchise.
And you're kind of excited for it too, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think what other franchise I've watched all of that are at least 8 movies long, because I think we're now one movie more than Tremors. I'm guessing it's got to be Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, dude, Star Wars. You've seen all the Star Wars movies, right?
Oh, yeah, but do we really count 6 of
All in-
those.
Oh,
Fair enough.
man,
Fair enough.
yeah,
Fair
I
enough.
mean, like, you sat through
I don't want to lose any
Furious,
listeners.
you know, you sat through Too Fast, Too Furious. So I think you can count the lesser entries in a series as well. The other one, I don't know if I've seen all of them, but James Bond, you know, there's a billion of those movies. And I don't know if you can grow up in the 80s and have TBS and not see at least 50% of the James Bond films.
Yeah, for some reason I always think of those as like separate, but you know, that argument I'm sure doesn't hold up because any franchise changes directors and writers and actors. So
yeah.
fair enough.
All right, brother. Well, I can't wait to watch 8 and then discuss it with you. This is going to be so much fun. And then after 8, we got Hobbs and Shaw, and then, you know, Better Luck Tomorrow.
Sounds like a plan. Anyways, you know, as always, we want to thank Michael Eads, especially during this quarantine time, for still getting our podcasts out to all the listeners.
Want to thank Scott Bricklin and Scooby Tunes Music for the use of the most excellent theme song, Walk Away.
And JT, you know I love to say it every time. Be excellent to each other.
Party on, dudes.
JT, be excellent to each other, my dude.
Yeah. Party on, dudes.
All right, that's stupid. Be excellent to each other, my dude. Party on. I'm a fucking idiot.
You're great. I love you. We're doing this together, man. I wish I could look into your eyes while you're saying it.
And JT, keep on keeping on.
Keep on trucking, my brother. Party on, Kelly. Party on, Jason.
JT, be excellent to each other.
Party on, Kelly.
All right, at least got a solid tag here. Complete and total meltdown in my bedroom. Meltdown in my bedroom. Meltdown in my bedroom.